and welcome to the Casual Cinecast powered by Cinelinx. My name is Chris, and with me as always is Mike. How are you doing today, sir?
I am doing well. You may have noticed that there is no Justin this week, and that is because he is taking the month off of June, and we expect him back soon. However, to stand in for him today, we have our fellow friend and film nerd, Peyton Paulette. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great, and I'm glad to be here.
Yeah. So, thank you for stepping in on such short notice, and thanks for, going to see X-Men for us.
Yeah, no problem.
It's a big ask.
Yeah, we appreciate it. Peyton should be here pretty much throughout the end of June, unless our schedules just don't line up. But yeah, for the most part, he will be stepping in for Justin. So, thanks, Peyton.
No problem.
Now, if this is your first time joining us, normally we like to start off every episode in a section called News on the March, where we talk about all the relevant film news or things that we've been watching over the last week, and then move into our feature review. This week we are reviewing Dark Phoenix, directed by Simon Kinberg.
Yeah, and don't forget that each month we review a film from the Criterion Collection, which is voted on by you, the listeners. So go check out our latest episode on Stalker, and look forward to our new episode on Weekend, which is really disappointing because Justin won again, and he won by like one vote on that too. He beat me out by one vote. It's pretty awful. Although I get to watch Weekend, so I can't complain too much.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and he was, of course, talking about Jean-Luc Godard. Weekend won out over Pierre Lafaut and Alphaville.
Oh, okay.
I know. I voted for Pierre Lafaut.
I would have voted for that too.
I know. It's clearly the best movie of all three of those, but that's okay. That's okay. The people have spoken. What can you do? So look forward to that. It always happens in this exact feed. The Casually Criterion episodes are labeled as such, and we would love for you to check those out. Also, don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe. You can do that on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Casual Cinecast. Email us at casualcinemedia@gmail.com. You can also drop an iTunes review and subscribe. Please, we would appreciate that. All right, and with that, are we ready to move into News on the March?
Let's do it.
News on the March!
All right, Peyton. So, since you are the guest on the podcast, I would like to speak to you first.
Yes.
Also, because you have the most interesting thing that you've been doing.
Oh, yes.
And of course, that is that you went to the Cannes Film Festival this year.
I did.
First of all, why don't you tell me a little bit about how you managed to go to Cannes and, how did that all come to be?
Yeah, this is my fourth trip to Cannes. So this is my fourth year to go. It kind of, weirdly enough, it was sort of a back road on how I got into it, but it was this company. They're a private company. They're called American Pavilion, and they are the American presence at the Cannes Film Festival. Little known fact is that every country, literally every single country on Earth, has a cultural arts outreach for their country. Like, come and film in our country because it's great, and we'll give you, financial benefits, and they support the arts. The United States doesn't. We're the only country that doesn't, of course. So this company started in the late 80s, and they basically were like, we're going to fill the gap made by the U.S. So we're a private company. We're going to get sponsors, and we're going to be that cultural outreach for the United States here. And they to sort of help out with have employees there and have workers at the Cannes Film Festival tent. They do internships for students, and I got in touch with them through one of our professors here that sends hospitality students to that event. And they said, they do film. Would you like to get some film students involved? And would you maybe want to be a student advisor? And I said, sure. So I applied for that job, and I got it. And they have asked me every year for the past 4 years to return. And I essentially just advise the students, and I teach a little class on filmmaking when I'm over there. That's kind of how that works. So That's how I kind of got involved with it. And I mean, my work involves basically like 4 hours a day. I just advise the students and I'm just there for them. The other rest of the day, I can just go to movies. And part of my thing is they don't pay me anything to go, but my payment is I get a room for free. I get breakfast every day and they give me a badge that I can go to all the movies.
Yeah, that works considering that most people would pay them to go.
Exactly right. That's how I get to go. And I mean, when I'm not with the students, I'm usually seeing as many movies as I can. And I did see a lot. I think I saw around 12 movies, nice. Which I didn't listen to the last episode, but I did a little like man on the street thing. And I sent it to Justin about like what I had seen thus far.
Yeah, I threw it in there in its entirety.
Great.
It was so good. I didn't edit a bit.
Okay, great. Awesome. I didn't know if you were going to have to or not, so it's good to hear.
No, you're very well spoken.
Okay, good. But yeah, so I got so busy when I got back, I didn't have a chance to give like the other half because it goes on for 2 weeks. And so the last week I was there, I did get to see the new Tarantino film. And it was so there the way the film festival works, they have their big red carpet premiere with all the stars, and then usually the next day they'll have just like screenings throughout the city in various different places, and then you can just like wear your flip flops and go see it and like go see a movie. And all you need is a badge to get it. So I was on the street for the red carpet premiere, and I've never seen that many people. There was 10,000 people on the streets, and when Tarantino and Brad Pitt and everybody stepped out on the red carpet, it was like this like shockwave went through the crowd. It was really cool to be there for that. But I went to go see the movie the next day. I really enjoyed it. I would say it was better than Hateful Eight. But it was just a little long. It was 2 hours and 45 minutes. But I mean, it's his best looking movie. It's probably his most personal film. Because it has to deal with spotlighting, failed actors or like, people, kind of the thing he does, which is finding those lost gem actors from the 70s and the 60s and 70s and bringing them to light. And that's all that was about.
I mean, this is Tarantino's playground, right? This is what he's been working up to his whole career, it seems.
It felt like it. Yeah. I mean, it was really good. There were certain spans and I'm just like, man, if you cut 30 minutes, I sound like R. Scott saying this. If you cut 30 minutes, no one would notice.
Yeah, you're getting old, Peyton.
Yeah, I know, but no.
I know. Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
How does it compare to Django? Because in my opinion, I liked Django okay.
Yes.
And then I liked Hateful Eight slightly more.
Yes.
I feel like the last movie that I loved from Tarantino, I think, was probably Inglourious.
Yes, that absolutely. I liked this one more than his previous two, but it's still no Inglourious Bastards. That's like I think Kill Bill 1 and 2 is his undisputed masterpiece. That's like his one movie is like flawless.
I think like no matter how you slice it, between Pulp Fiction, Kill Bills Volume 1 and 2, and Inglourious Bastards, even if all of those movies aren't your favorite, they are all like huge cultural touchstones. Yes. Like he has cemented himself over and over again as like a legend, I think. So just as far as like relevance goes.
The biggest thing that I liked about it, and which was absolutely magical, it felt like I was in another place in another time. Like the art direction was so unbelievable. Like there was huge swaths of downtown, like just Sunset Boulevard that he had completely redressed and made into the 1960s. I mean, that was just astonishing. That was a character in of itself, and that was the best part of the movie. So yeah, a thumbs up on that one. I thought it was great. I saw the one that won the Palme d'Or, Parasite, which is the Bong Joon-ho.
Awesome. I love Bong Joon-ho's Korean movies.
Yeah, and it was an amazing movie. It was kind of, it was in his wheelhouse, so you could tell it was his movie. And it was, when I got out of the theater, I was like, this is the best movie. I mean, hands down, the best one I saw, and I was like, if it doesn't win, then they're dumb. And I'm glad it won, because it was the standout, great movie.
Man, that makes me so happy.
Huh?
I said that makes me so happy because I love that director. He made one of my favorite movies called Memories of Murder.
It was his, the Parasite is very much, it was reminiscent of like Invasion of the Body Snatchers, kind of. So it was like that, but, mixed with Memories of Murder. So it was really good and dark and great.
It's more Memories of a Murder than Oakjaw.
Oh, yes. He went back to his roots. It was much more like that than it was like a kiddie movie. Yeah.
How much of The Host is in there though? Is there any like horror comedy like The Host?
Yes, it was glorious. And he was like, one of the things I like about him is he can switch between tones so easily. And he did that in this movie. Like, it would have these moments of like bleak, dark comedy, and which were just wonderful. And yeah, so I highly recommend it when it does come to the States, if it ever does. It might be a while, but yeah.
Surely we'll get the movie that won the Palme d'Or. Like, surely that will come to the States somehow.
Yes.
Was Shoplifters the one that won last year?
I don't think it was Shoplifters. I think it was...
No, it was Shoplifters. That's what.
Okay, no, it was Shoplifters, and then Burning was the other one that was...
Oh, yes, yeah.
That I thought it was, so...
And we both got those within the year, so I imagine we'll get Parasite fairly soon.
After this film festival was over and I'd seen all these like intense art films, I was like, I really need a palate cleanser. So I went to go see John Wick 3 in a French cinema. Just like I went and bought a ticket and going to go see that, and that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I can imagine that being a nice palate cleanser. I enjoy a good John Wick film. These guys, Justin's not here to defend himself, but I'm going to speak for him anyway. Justin and I believe Chris didn't like it as much because I think they had just watched John Wick 2, like right before seeing John Wick 3.
I'd watched the first two in the same weekend, yeah. So that was my bad.
It was the weakest of the three, but it was still a lot of fun. My only complaint with it was by the time we got to the end, I was so like fight fatigued out because the first two fight scenes, particularly the one where he like fought the giant with a book, was so amazing.
It happens in the first act, so I'm just going to go ahead and talk about the first act. I think the knife fight in the first act is like the highlight of the movie.
It was, absolutely, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Let me ask you this, Peyton, about the Cannes Film Festival. What is a movie that you saw there, like the one that you want to talk about the most right now, because you're just itching to talk about it, but you have no one to talk about it with?
I didn't have one. I didn't have any that I was this year that I was just like, oh my God. I really like this documentary called Making Waves. I didn't know anything about it other than it was about sound design. But when I walked out of the theater, it was the one that I was the most excited about, and the one that I hope gets a lot of love because it was a tiny little movie. It was a passion project, super low budget. And you know, my only fear with movies like that is that they kind of just vanish into oblivion. Like it'll just pop up on, you know, Netflix and get buried. Right. Yeah. You know, I'm hoping that doesn't happen because it was a really good documentary about what sound can bring to your movie. And, you know, she got great interviews with like Ben Burt and George Lucas and Ang Lee and Christopher Nolan, all these guys that are really known for using sound.
Sound
really
is more important than anything.
It is, you know, and so I love that. In all the years that I've been to the Cannes Film Festival, the movie that I went to go see that I was the most excited about and I could not wait to talk to somebody else about it, and I really haven't had a chance to, was Under the Silver Lake.
Oh, we had a whole episode on that.
Yeah, okay, so that was when I was like blown out of my socks. I thought it was like the best movie I'd seen, and I was like, this is the most amazing thing. And everybody I talked to hated it when I was there at the festival. And it's a pretty divisive movie, but I was like, just any minute now. I mean, this thing is gonna, like, I hope it comes to the States. And you know, and of course it was a weird thing because he was showing that movie in competition, but it was also for sale. So he was trying to find a distributor too, and nobody would touch it. Like as soon as the reviews came out and they were kind of mediocre at best, I mean, like he could not get distribution on this thing, even though he had Andrew Garfield in it, and then, you know, he had just come off of It Follows. They just kind of dropped it on VOD without giving it any kind of anything else. I was a little disappointed with, but you know, I'm hoping it's got some life as sort of a cult movie, and I feel like it's starting to gain momentum. I'm like hearing more and more about it. I'm seeing more and more people review it on YouTube and stuff. So I hope that movie, you know, gets a past life, you know, an afterlife in some sort of market. So yeah, I
think it's primed for that. Yeah.
Yeah. If anything, just because I want to see that director continue, because I feel like he's very talented.
The weirdest, most surreal experience I've ever had was last year. Again, last year was weird for movies there, but I went to go see John Gotti. And the way it was really interesting because it's a fascinating story around that was that John Travolta, it wasn't supposed to screen there. Like it wasn't supposed to show at the Cannes Film Festival. John Travolta just showed up with his posse and all the cast, and he just walked into the Palais and was like, hey, I'm John Travolta and I've got a movie and you're going to show it. And of course they just shuffled things around and they shoved in a showing really late at night, like a 10 o'clock premiere in a really obscure little theater in the Palais. And they did something really smart, though. They came by the American Pavilion with a huge fat stack of tickets because they were doing a premiere and the press was going to be there, and they wanted a sold out show. So they just gave a fat stack of tickets and said, hand these out. We want to sell out the show. And it was a packed full house. But I mean, everybody was there. I sat behind John Travolta, so I was staring at the back of his head when he was watching it. Kelly Preston was right next to him. And then all of the surviving members of the Gambino crime family were also in attendance.
Oh my goodness. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, it was. And so there were these moments in the movie, like, and I'm watching this like movie and they're glorifying this like horrible person and they're applauding. Like the Gambino crime family was like, yeah, you know, so weird. So yeah.
You know, it seems like a big gamble. Like unless you're absolutely sure your movie is great, it seems like premiering it at Cannes is more just like a high-profile failure.
It is. And, you know, and there's different types of movies that go there. Some just want a big splashy premiere. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood wasn't trying to they weren't vying for any awards. They screened out of competition, so they were just there to make a big splash. Other ones are there to try to sell. So like, you know, Under the Silver Lake was in competition and trying to sell. Gotti, surprisingly enough, was there to sell, and it screened out of competition. But you know, it can be a failure, and it cannot sell, and that's that was an interesting thing about Gotti was, and this is I had heard, this is like inside scoop, nobody really knows about this, but they went there to sell the movie, and before the movie had premiered, they sold the movie to Lionsgate sight unseen. And so they bought it, and then the movie premiered. Reviews came out that were abysmal, and Lionsgate came back to the producers, which was John Travolta, he produced it, and said, we would like to back out of this, please, and we will actually pay you money. I mean, I think from what I heard, Lionsgate gave them money to get out of the contract, because I guess to them it was we'll actually lose less money this way. So, and, you know, I think at the very end they got some slap jab distributor finally bought it.
I believe it was actually MoviePass had something to do with them, and that they bought it.
That's right.
Yeah.
MoviePass was like promoting that movie. Because I remember at the time there was like some kind of advertisement on their app that was like, don't listen to the critics.
Right.
Make up your own mind. Gotti or whatever. And like they were really trying to push for that movie.
Well, and John Travolta introduced the movie, and he said he stood up and he's like this is a passion project, and he said I want this to be my Godfather. And it was funny, I was sitting next to this guy, one of the other student advisors, and I just leaned over and I was like, what if it sucks? And as soon as the font choice popped up, I was like, oh, it's bad.
All right. So, anything else about the Cannes Film Festival?
Not really. I mean, that's about all I can think of. It's a lot of fun. And I will say this to anybody that's interested in going to the Cannes Film Festival. It's and this is for you guys too. It's not unobtainable to go there. I always thought that, this Cannes Film Festival is something you can't go to, but you absolutely can. I mean, as long as if you've got a couple of $100, you can buy a film pass. And you can get over there. You can get like an Airbnb that's relatively inexpensive, and you can go to the Cannes Film Festival and you can do all this stuff. I mean, you can run into celebrities, and you can and if all you want to do is just go see films, I mean, it's absolutely doable. So it's I would say keep that in mind. It's not this ivory tower that you can't climb. It's a great experience to see, and there's a little thrill to seeing a movie that might not ever get seen again. That's what I always tell the students when I'm there, because I spent a lot of time. I saw a lot of the higher profile films, but I also made an effort to try to go and find like the little movies that I might never see again.
Right.
And there's been a couple that I've seen that I've never ever seen promoted, or they just sort of vanished. Some weird little art film that came out of Korea that's never been seen before. Some are bad, some are great. But those are the ones that you should be like pursuing, and you can see them pretty easily there.
Yeah. So after this, it's one of the things that are on my bucket list. So we need to get together and figure out how we can all go next year.
Yeah, for real. Yeah. Well, you know what? We'll fire up a GoFundMe and we'll get everyone to go ahead and just pitch in for the Casual Cinecast Goes to Cannes.
Do it.
Be awesome. We could
Fund.
Yeah.
You got the inside scoop. I can take you to all the cool restaurants and stuff.
Nice.
All right, so let's move on. What do you say we talk about this little show called Chernobyl? Have you guys heard of this show?
I have.
I have as well. Yes.
It apparently is HBO, or I think it's the highest rated show on HBO.
I thought
On
it was,
IMDb
I read
is
it was
what I
the
think I
highest
saw.
rated show like ever or something.
Ever. That's easy to do when you only have 5 episodes in and out.
Yeah.
Actually, it's not easy to do. I don't want to take that back. Not easy to do. So, how much of this show have you guys seen?
I just finished it last night.
I watched most of the first episode. I've been in and out of it, but that's all I watched. So
Okay. So, overall, I think this is a show that I think is quite good.
mm-hmm. Yes.
Like from the opening episode, I found it to be incredibly compelling. I wasn't alive in 1986, but I had always heard about Chernobyl.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't until this show that I realized how little I'd ever actually known about the whole thing.
Just a quick story. I talked to my mother last night as I was watching Chernobyl, and I was like, hey, what do you know about Chernobyl? Like, what do you remember of it? And she barely knew anything about Chernobyl or what happened there, you know? So I don't think Americans knew quite a bit about it, for sure.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I don't think anyone realized just how crazy of a disaster this was or could have been had they not acted. Man, it's just really, really terrifying stuff. And the show breaks down the process of everything that happened in such a digestible and easy to follow way.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
It's just infinitely fascinating. And I just want to add real quick before I let Chris talk. I think the cast is really great, especially Jared Harris.
Mm-hmm.
That guy has been doing some really great stuff lately. He was in last year. He was in that show The Terror,
Right.
on AMC, which I didn't finish, but I started and it was really good. And I have every intention of going back to finish it. And I believe, wasn't he also in Dunkirk?
Ooh, I don't know.
Well, now I got to check it. Damn it. Oh, Mad Men. That's what it was. It's not a movie. It's a TV show. I forgot I'd seen him in Mad Men for years.
And Stellan Skarsgård's always amazing.
Yeah, he's always amazing. And also, oh God, what is her name?
Emily Watson, yes.
Emily Watson. I always want to say Mortimer, but that's not the right Emily.
No.
Or Emma. Yeah. So anyway, the cast is just absolutely great in this show. There has been a bit of a pushback I want to talk about in a minute.
Yeah.
But first, I want to see what Chris thought.
Yeah, I really like this show. I like the way it broke down the events of Chernobyl. And, you know, like you were saying, Mike, made them very digestible and very easy to take in. Just interesting things that happened, like the Liquidators. That's not a spoiler, but, you know, like the Liquidators was an interesting offshoot that they took. Yeah, it's horrifying. I also think that there's maybe... this took place in Russia, right? But as I was watching it, I could see this taking place in America for the same reasons, you know, like with lies and stuff like that. So it's not necessarily... I didn't take it as something that was anti-Russia. You know, I thought it was something that's just about how we as humans lie to ourselves and to each other, and that the damage that it can cause. You know, I found that really interesting.
Well, sure. Yeah. I mean, there has been a bit of pushback on this show. A lot of people are getting caught in like the nitpicky details. Of course, it's not 100% accurate. They have to, you know, make it a little more dramatized.
I was going to ask you, have you had an opportunity to listen to the podcast?
No,
the
I
official
haven't.
podcast. So what's really interesting about that podcast is Craig Mazin, who actually also does the podcast Script Notes, which is a really great podcast if you guys haven't, about script writing and stuff. But anyways, Craig Mazin and Peter Segal from Wait, Don't Tell Me get together, and they talk about the stuff that they left out or the stuff that they changed and why. And Craig Mazin said that the reason he did that was because we were trying to do something so truthful. I need to tell you guys why I changed things and why things had to change, you know, in order to make the story more compelling, you know. And it's really this honest look at storytelling and why it can't be 100% truthful, right? I found the podcast really well done as well.
Yeah, absolutely. There's actually a documentary. They actually had video reference, and there's actually a short documentary on YouTube called Chernobyl 3828.
Okay.
I suggest after watching a little bit of this show, if you're curious to dive into like the real event a little bit more, look that up. It's really fascinating, and you can tell where they got like a lot of their visual references and tried to keep it as like lifelike as possible. Really fascinating stuff and very terrifying. Just the idea, like these poor people, like these firefighters and the first responders on the scene, like these people had no idea what they were walking into, you know?
Right. It's devastating, really. And one of the things I didn't realize when I first started watching is how close we came to a much bigger disaster than actually happened. You know, losing a whole continent, essentially. You know, it's pretty crazy.
Yeah. I actually, after Chernobyl was over, I got on YouTube and I looked up a video on the elephant's foot, which is like what's left of the core, you know, like it's like the most radioactive mess of melted crap on the planet, you know, and it looks all wrinkly like an elephant's foot. And like they were saying, like, if you stand next to it for 5 minutes, you're dead. You can actually start to like feel it within a few seconds of standing next to it.
It's crazy.
So, yeah. And it's just like, oh my God, that's so terrifying.
Literally, our last episode was on Stalker. The comparisons of the two things is, even though Stalker came out before Chernobyl, like you were saying, Mike, there's things that happened before that were similar to it.
Chernobyl's the first worst nuclear disaster. Russia also holds the third worst nuclear disaster, which was the basis of the visual look of Stalker. Have you seen Stalker, Peyton?
Yes, I have. Yeah.
Yeah, we just put out an episode on it recently. That was my first time seeing it, and it has not left my brain since seeing it.
But watching Chernobyl, I mean, for me, made it all that much more important to me, Stalker. You know, like Russians that are trying to deal with this crazy nuclear development, and how they deal with it through art is just really amazing to me and endlessly fascinating, I think.
A lot of people are really resonating with Chernobyl, and I think there's a reason for that. I think this is the right time and place for a show like this. I think it's important that we see something like this now. And I think it's like a realistic, dark response to the world now, it seems, you know? And I think that's why it hits home, at least for me. I think it's really resonating with a lot of people, but that's what I feel.
So let me ask you, Mike, after watching Chernobyl, how do you feel about nuclear power as a source of energy? Does it worry you more now? I mean, like both of us grew up in Granbury or have lived in Granbury, which is literally within 20 miles of a nuclear reactor, a nuclear power plant? Yeah. Like, does it change your mind on nuclear power? Or?
You know, I don't know. I mean, like, growing up next to a nuclear power plant, you always hear the same things that they heard here, which is that, like, it's impossible. Right. It just can't happen. Yeah. Nothing bad can happen. There's too many fail-safes, which is exactly what they thought, too, you know? I never worried too much about it, and I probably still think that it's better than a lot of alternatives.
Yeah, as long as the fail-safes are in place.
Being cleaner. Yeah. It's just one of those things where it's like, you know, you're you know, forgive the expression, you're playing with a nuclear bomb. You know, like it's a dangerous thing, you know? It's you just have to respect it, I guess. It's one of those things where it's like, I don't even know how to form an opinion on such a thing.
Makes sense.
You know?
Yeah.
I think Chernobyl's a good thing to see. This has always been kind of a fear with this, right? Like this PR kind of stuff. Like nuclear is always kind of like the most cost efficient, cleanest way to go, but also Chernobyl.
I recommend it.
Yeah, recommend it. Hearty recommend. Peyton, I hope that you get a chance to go back and at least finish the first episode, and hopefully you are inspired to keep going from there, because I think this show is incredible.
Yes.
And it feels like just like a gigantic movie, kind of like Chris was saying. Like, we don't get mini series like this anymore, I feel.
Right.
Like big event television like this.
And I like that it's not, it was just 5 episodes. It's easily digestible, and it's not this giant ongoing thing. I like things that are kind of just, you know, one and done. You know, let's just
finite.
Well, yeah, we'll have time to really dig into this and get to know characters. So, you know, we'll make it more than just 1 episode or longer than 2 hours. So I think that's great. So I'm looking forward to diving into it. I will, you know, just things that I've read into, which I thought was interesting, was it was developed by the guy who wrote Scary Movie 3 and 4.
Yeah, that's Craig Mazin that does the script notes that I was talking about.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I'd read it was either Slash Film or AV Club or something, and they were talking about it, and someone had said, I was talking to this guy, Craig Mazin, however you say his name, but he said, I've done all these comedy films because he did Identity Thief, and he's done, it's mostly comedies, like lighthearted, like raunchy comedies, and he really felt like he wanted to do some drama, and everyone was like, I don't know, bud. That might be out of your wheelhouse.
Yeah, doesn't seem like your wheelhouse.
Yeah, so I think but I mean, he's got it in him, and he's made a great show. I mean, just from what I've seen, I mean, it's hard hitting and looks amazing. It looks nothing like any of that other stuff. So I mean, I think I'm looking forward to getting into it.
It has almost like a Soderbergh kind of feel to it. Like I felt like I was watching Contagion or something.
No, I had the same thing. Yeah.
Chernobyl, can't recommend it enough. I wish we were reviewing it for the full review instead of Dark Phoenix.
Yeah, same.
So with that, guys, are we ready to move into our review of X-Men Dark Phoenix?
Oh, sure.
That wasn't very enthusiastic.
Well, I've got thoughts on it, but yes, let's do it.
Ladies and gentlemen of NASA, this is Charles Xavier. Help is on the way.
We're doing space missions now. Cool.
We get the astronauts, we bring them home. Go.
Heat signature's rising fast.
We gotta get out of here.
Where's Jean?
Where is she?
She should be dead.
Did you hear what the kids are calling you? Phoenix.
Hello, Jean. Who are you? The better question is, who are you?
Something's happening to me. When I lose control, bad things happen. But it feels good.
That power destroyed everything it ever came into contact with. Until you. The X-Men fear you. And what they fear, we seek to destroy.
She'll kill us all.
The girl dies.
She's still our friend. She's not Jean anymore.
Are you threatening me?
That's right.
That would be a bad idea.
Okay, so as always with our feature reviews, we will have a spoiler-free section at the beginning, so you can listen to the entire review up to that point, and then you will receive a nice, hearty, sizable spoiler bumper. And you can venture past if you want. It'll all be time-stamped in the show. X-Men Dark Phoenix, directed by Simon Kinberg.
Yes.
Starring Sophie Turner, James McAvoy, and Michael Fassbender.
Among others.
Yeah, amongst many others. The IMDb synopsis says, Jean Grey begins to develop incredible powers that can corrupt and turn her into a Dark Phoenix. Now the X-Men will have to decide if the life of a team member is worth more than all of the living, or all the people living in the world. That is a clunky synopsis.
Very clunky, yeah.
They should have stopped at the very beginning. Like the second sentence of it doesn't work.
It is entirely unnecessary. So who wants to kick us off? I vote Peyton.
Okay.
Since you are the guest.
Yes.
Well, let's kick it off. What are your overall... Well, let me ask you this. Before you give me your thoughts, let me ask you both. What is your relationship to the X-Men or the X-Men movies? Is this franchise something that you are familiar with?
I saw the very first X-Men film in theaters, and I absolutely loved it. I thought X-Men 2 was even better. I mean, it took it and went even further, so I was a bit invested in it. Last Stand is the worst. I think if you've seen all of the X-Men films, I have seen all of them, including the Wolverine spinoffs and all that stuff. So I have seen them all. But very few of them in theaters. I think Logan was the last one I had seen in theaters. But I've seen them all. I'm minorly invested in it, but that's my relationship with it. I mean, I enjoy the Wolverine films for what they are. I enjoy them for what they are. I would say I guess so. I mean, it's peripheral Marvel, but I mean, it's still good. I mean, I've always liked them. They're my absolute favorite. Iron Man's still my favorite, but those line of films. But no, I have a weird relationship with it that it feels like it's like Halloween or something. Like we're constantly hitting the reset button and we're retconning things. That's always been, always been a little frustrating. So that's my relationship with it.
Yeah, Chris, what's your relationship with X-Men?
So yeah, I saw X-Men 1 in the theaters as well. I was not as big of a fan as Peyton. I've always thought that X-Men would make a much better TV show because there's so many characters that they try to kind of clump in there.
I think you were probably a little older when it came out than us, though, right?
I was. I think it came out in 99, and that was the year I graduated high school. So I'm older than you guys.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you guys are probably about 5 years younger than me, I believe. Just putting all the beans on the table. I just made that statement up myself.
So exposed.
Yeah. So I'm about 5 years older than you guys. So I probably, if it had come out 5 years before and I watched it, I would have liked it a lot more. But I just really think it would make a much better TV show, or, which is probably going to happen, a TV show that is in the movies like the MCU is now, like where they can, like each character kind of gets their own movie and character development.
Well, good thing Disney Plus is coming out and that probably will happen.
Yeah. So, one of the good things, or one of probably the only good things to come from the Disney merger is that X-Men will be handled by Kevin Feige, and hopefully we'll get better X-Men movies out of it. I have liked X-Men movies. I thought they were decent, and I really admire them for their metaphor, of people that are different and finding a community within that difference. I think that's a really good story. Logan is probably my favorite X-Men film, to be honest. And I know it's not even necessarily...
That's because it's the best X-Men film.
Yeah, that's true.
It is, absolutely. So. Hands down, agreed, yeah.
So, yeah, that's my relationship to X-Men. I don't think that they're not my favorite, but I think that they can make good, solid films, and they have, so...
Yeah, so I'm right there with you guys. I feel like this franchise has had its ups and downs. It's never been a franchise I'm crazy about. I've never read the comics, and the 90s cartoon... in its prime.
Yes.
And I was a little just too young to grasp it at the time.
Yeah, the cartoon. I used to love the cartoon.
Yeah, I was just a little too young. Like, it was just a little too serialized at the time for me to follow it.
I actually watched the Dark Phoenix saga in the cartoon. I don't remember much of it, but I remember
I watched it on Netflix 3 or 4 years ago.
Oh, did you? Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, they had the X-Men cartoon on Netflix. I don't know if it's still there or not, but I watched the first 3 or 4 seasons of it.
Nice.
Yeah, everything I know about the X-Men universe came from the TV show because I used to watch it when I was a kid too. That and the Batman.
Oh yeah, the animated series of the Batman was awesome.
I used to like the animated Spider-Man series too. Do you guys remember that one? Okay, anyways. I liked the first 2 X-Men movies when they came out. Like everyone else, I didn't like the third one. I think all the movies since then have been various stages of okay to bad.
Yes.
I think Logan is probably, like we said earlier, the best one. At this point, the franchise is such a mixed bag that it's hard to really get excited when a new one comes out. So I think with the past 5 X-Men movies, it's been more of a let's wait and see versus being excited before they arrive.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of where I'm at. So that's where we all are with the franchise. Peyton, what did you end up thinking about this version of the Dark Phoenix called X-Men Dark Phoenix?
Well, when we were discussing what we were going to watch for this, I even said I was interested to see this train wreck because that's what I had heard so much of it.
Right.
So I went in with very low expectations anyway, and I think maybe that's why I didn't hate it as much as I thought I would. It's my initial thing was it was a bit of a mess. It suffered from what I felt was they didn't know who the main protagonist was supposed to be. It was supposed to be Sophie Turner, but she's great in Game of Thrones. This is like a Game of Thrones problem, is that the people on that show are so great, but in everything else they're not so good. And Sophie Turner did not have the chops to hold a movie together, and so that was left on James McAvoy, who's always amazing in these things. But so that was confusing. Is like, okay, who's supposed to be the main protagonist? So that was a thing. That fell really flat. And going back to this plot synopsis. I have to agree. That was a bad plot synopsis on IMDb. X-Men have to decide if the life of a team member is worth more than all the people living in the world. I don't know that they were even aware that that's what they were doing.
Yeah. I didn't even think about that whenever I was criticizing the synopsis. But yeah, that's true. They also never have that conversation in the movie. Spoilers.
They don't have that discussion. But I guess that was my thing. I thought it was a competent enough film. I mean, it looks good, but there's a lot of weird things that happen in it. And I know Simon Kinberg he directed First Class, didn't he? Or at least
no, that was Matthew Vaughn.
Yeah, Matthew Vaughn did First Class.
This is actually Simon Kinberg's first film.
Is it really? Okay, I thought he had directed one of the other ones.
He has produced a bunch of stuff, but this is his first directorial debut or whatever.
Yeah. Well, he at least wrote them. I mean, he's written other X-Men films, yes. But so there were things that happened in the movie that were just really weird, which we'll get into when we talk about spoilers. Better than X-Men Last Stand is like that was like a TV movie to me. So anything is that was like bare minimum. It was better than that. It was not as headache inducing as Apocalypse. And a little known thing, I completely forgot Jessica Chastain was in this. Until she appears. And so I was like, oh, Jessica Chastain, and she does. I thought she did a pretty good job as the villain. She's great in everything, and she was probably. And this wasn't her best role by a long shot, but I mean, she was a really chilling kind of villain. I thought, which was good.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and kick off my thoughts too. Ultimately, I feel very similar to Peyton. I feel like this movie is about what I expected.
Yeah.
Especially after all the mess with reshoots and the trajectory of this franchise in general. It doesn't look like anyone's having fun. And it seems like something about this movie is just sort of like a paycheck for everyone involved. Especially Jennifer Lawrence, maybe Michael Fassbender. It seems like a lot of these characters don't want to be here. Or a lot of these actors, I should say. You have James McAvoy and Michael Fassbender trying to carry a lot of the stuff. Because like you said, Jean Grey, as played by Sophie Turner, is not that compelling of an antagonist. Or, excuse me, a protagonist. So we spend a lot of times with James McAvoy. There's no real arc for these people. I feel like the only two characters with an arc are probably Xavier and Jean Grey. Everyone else is just kind of there.
Which is kind of a problem with the X-Men franchise as a whole.
Well, maybe, but I think that's the problem with focusing on too many characters, right?
Yeah.
Like you can have one-off X-Men movies where you like the Wolverine movies. Like we don't have to just do one-off movies about Wolverine only. We can have a one-off movie about Quicksilver or Jean Grey, maybe.
Or Storm, for that matter. Storm very rarely does anything.
Yeah, these characters, in the entire, young cast since First Class, I think we've gotten maybe, 30 minutes of screen time with Storm.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't tell you a single character trait about young Storm.
Yeah.
That's another thing. We've already done this Dark Phoenix saga years ago. This technically being the past version of the characters we've already seen, it really doesn't add up or make any sense. But then again, this franchise never really has. It seems like Xavier and Magneto are going to have to age 30 years within the next 10 years for this to line up.
No shit. Yes, that blew my mind. We didn't talk about that, and I don't know if that's even important, but the time setting of this is 1992.
There's a meme showing Michael Fassbender in each movie, and then it's showing Ian McKellen in 1999, and it has the years for each one, and they're like, what the fuck happened to Michael Fassbender in the 90s?
Yeah. He's going to see some really terrible years coming ahead.
I just was going to, since you were kind of talking about the two movies, I was going to throw in Jerry Hart's question. The two movies, Jerry Hart actually wrote in on Facebook, since both movies tackle the Phoenix storyline, which is better, The Last Stand or Dark Phoenix?
Well, that was actually my next point. I'm going to go ahead and say, hands down, Dark Phoenix is better than The Last Stand.
Yes.
It's been so long, I would probably have to say yes too, but I haven't seen The Last Stand in forever, so I reserve judgment.
Yeah, well, here's what I was going to say. After all the stuff I just said about knocking on this movie, all that said, Dark Phoenix is not even close to the worst movie in the X-Men franchise.
Absolutely agree. Yes.
I personally, I feel it's better than X-Men Origins, Wolverine.
Oh, yes.
I feel it's better than Apocalypse. I feel like it's better than The Last Stand as well. Yeah. That doesn't mean much. It's still a bad movie, but it's comfortably middle tier X-Men movie. Yeah. It has some good stuff in it. I do think there's some emotional payoffs with like some side characters, but ultimately I'm so like disinterested in the overall arcs of even the characters that I do like, because the franchise has just kind of gone off the rails at this point with the last 2 movies, that I'm glad it's over. I'm ready for this franchise to end and a new X-Men franchise to begin sometime soon. So, yeah. Chris, your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm not that far from you guys. I feel like I could dump on this movie for a while. I'm going to say a couple things that I liked real quick. You mentioned Quicksilver earlier, and particularly liked his scene in this because his scenes of him running really fast and fixing everything ever since he made his debut, I think was Days of Future Past, I believe.
Yeah.
Have been a staple in all the X-Men movies since then. What I really liked is how they turned it on its head in this movie, because you're expecting some sort of crazy Quicksilver scene. So yeah, I enjoyed that. We talked about Sophie Turner, and I like her in Game of Thrones. I don't know what's going on in this movie with her. I think she has been given things that are hard.
I don't think it's just her. I think everyone feels a little stiff in this.
And ultimately her character does things, and I don't understand why her character's doing these things. I don't understand if it's because whatever's inside of her, or if because she's angry. I'm not exactly sure what she's angry about.
Yes.
If she is actually angry, there's a lot of things, especially with that character, where it's hard to connect with her because there's so much going on that I don't understand. This was supposed to be a movie, about her and about redemption. I like some of the ideas in this that I just don't think go far enough. Like men controlling women, being gaslit, and it's not even about men controlling women, but about people being gaslit and being told something and then things changing, but they never explore any of those things.
Yeah, there are some genuine ideas there, but they feel clunky and out of place because they're not explored, right?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
There's a line that Jennifer Lawrence says that is just cringy bad, that is like, women are running this show, you might as well call it the X-Women or something like that.
Yeah.
Like, do we need such an on-the-nose line? Can we not explore that idea in like a more clever way?
Yeah.
Right? Like you said, there are ideas there that are worth your while if they had been executed, in my opinion, in more of like a worthwhile way.
And the dialogue in this is generally bad.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. So, yeah, those are our overall thoughts. Overall, I would say I only recommend this movie if you are okay with Apocalypse, if you don't hate Apocalypse and you think Apocalypse was a fine time or better, then this is the movie for you.
Yeah, agreed.
On this one, I think my vote is stay home and watch Chernobyl.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I would agree with that.
No, I guess Rosebud is just a piece in a jigsaw puzzle.
Any more cigarettes you got up there? I'll tell you all about it.
Things are going to start happening to me now.
And here we go.
Okay, Peyton, you said that Michael Fassbender and James McAvoy pretty much have to carry the last part of the movie. I totally agree with you. Everything from the point of where they get on that train is entirely... Well, even before that, from the moment James McAvoy, like, she's levitating him out of that chair, the movie becomes Xavier and Magneto's story again.
Yes, it does.
And that's a problem.
Yeah, I'll insert this though. When Phoenix like levitates him out of the chair, I was in the theater with maybe 5 other people, and every single one of us like belly laughed at that moment. So I don't know if that was intentional or not, but it was not. It did. I don't know. It was kind of clunky the way that was handled, but yes,
it is weird. I feel like she should have just floated him up in front of her.
Yeah,
like one of the only scenes that had any kind of emotion or emotional impact on me the entire movie was the last scene whenever Magneto comes up to him and insists on playing chess.
Yes,
and saving his life. And it's like
that reminds me of like it was a little shoehorned in, I felt, because it's like it reminded me of Adam Sandler films, which, you know, they're not very good, but they always try to do something at the end that makes you feel good about yourself. So it felt like it was one of those things like, you know, this movie wasn't very good, but do you remember these characters that you loved and how good they were? And, you know, weren't those good times? And, you know, so yes, I agree. That was like a high point, but I felt like they were trying to send everybody home feeling good when the movie overall wasn't bad because just, you know, this in general, people remember the first and last things they see. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but you have to rely also, and I wanted to touch on this, like, they don't do anything in this movie to make you care about that or to even earn that scene. That scene is entirely reliant on, like, every other movie that you've seen before this one.
Yes. It was just a reminder. Remember those other movies? Yeah, absolutely agreed.
Yeah, remember movies that were better than this one? This franchise is good, right? This is all okay. I have a problem, I guess, with the way everyone treated Professor Xavier. Like, I get it. He put up a block in Jean Grey's mind, right? And part of the plot is like he has to learn that he was like mansplaining her own mind to her or something like that, right? Like he was gaslighting her. He shouldn't have been. I know what's best for you. You know, I'm a man, etc. They tried to hit those notes, but man, do they not do it in a very good way. Like it feels like I heard a lot of these reshoots that they had to do were because the movie ended up being too similar to Captain Marvel at one point.
Oh, okay.
Well, the ending, so they switched it to the train, is either Captain Marvel or Civil War is another one that I heard it compared to.
I heard they had a couple different reshoots because they ended up being too similar to two different kinds of movies. So what they ended up with now is a result of two different sets of reshoots so that they wouldn't end up like two different, more popular movies.
That's pretty ridiculous.
That's what I've heard. Whatever. But like, if that's true, I think it shows.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because like there's an idea in there somewhere of a good plot for Xavier to have, like a good lesson to be learned about playing with people's minds and being a know-it-all. And there's a good lesson to be learned about the students feeling betrayed by him. But really the way it comes off in the movie is it's just brushed on. Jennifer Lawrence, who's like his best friend in this new prequel series of movies, Raven Mystique is like his best friend since childhood. She hates him the whole movie until she's dead. And she's just like, you suck, Xavier. You don't really care about her. You should know better. And it's like, has he not proven in the past 30 years that like he'll go to the wall for you guys?
Right. You know, like, it's funny. I'm listening to you talk about that. That is already a better movie than what we saw.
So, I mean, like there's drama to be had here. And the fact that like you said, I mean, the movie does move. It has good pacing, but that's also, it has good pacing because we don't spend any time with like motivation. Like, why is Raven so mad at Xavier? What happened there? What we have in the movie is not enough context, you know?
It's just that one moment in space.
Yeah, so there's just a lot of really bizarre choices, and I think it's a Frankenstein's mesh of like arcs and ideas, and I think that's why it feels so weird.
Well, that begs the question: was there a longer movie here? Was there a 2.5 hour, 3 hour movie, and they had to cut it down? I don't know.
And would that longer movie be good, or is it better that they cut it down? Like, were they cutting it down strictly to get like a shorter runtime and higher turnover in the theaters, or were they cutting it down because they knew it was awful?
Maybe, or maybe they were just like, you know, this is supposed to be Dark Phoenix, so we need to focus more on Sophie, so we got to cut all that stuff or we got to focus on Jean Grey, we got to cut down a lot of that Xavier stuff, but the Xavier plot line was a lot more interesting. Who knows?
Yeah. That's all I've really got for the movie, to be honest with you. Does anyone have anything else in spoilers that they want to talk about?
Yeah. Well, I wanted to kind of get it back into the Jessica Chastain stuff.
Yeah. I kind of cut you off earlier in the edit. Sorry, everyone who's listening to this. Chris edited a huge chunk of Peyton's rant earlier because we started getting into spoilers and we had to cut him off in a very clunky manner. Sorry about that, Peyton.
Oh, no worries. No, it was, right as you warned me, I was like, oh yeah, that's a huge plot detail. But, as I was talking about, we were in space. There's this dark cloud that invades Jean Grey's body. She comes back to Earth. She starts exhibiting, augmented powers and stuff. And then we bring in the bad guy plot line in our B plot, which is Jessica Chastain and the realization that there is an alien race that kind of like Invasion of the Body Snatchers can inhabit the bodies of humans. And they come from a dying planet, and they want to use the Dark Phoenix power that's inside of Jean Grey to terraform Earth and make a replica of their own planet. And so that kind of felt like it came out of nowhere, because we just and everyone seems to be kind of unfazed by the fact that there's aliens and that they exist, and they just kind of accept it. But that's our bad guy, which is very Justice League-esque, where, you know, again, we're going back to terraforming. So it's, and that's essentially what they did. We just, instead of a giant ray gun from the sky or something, it's this cloud thing. But that's her main motivation. She is, Jessica Chastain is like the leader warrior alien from the planet that they're coming from, and she comes to Earth, and we realize that, you know, these aliens have been coming to Earth slowly over a period of time, and there's hundreds of them. Like,
wait, have they?
That's what I got.
My take was, so the aliens were following crazy power dust cloud in space, saw it inhabit Sophie Turner. It came to Earth, and then they all just came to Earth and started taking over people's bodies. That was my take on it.
Okay, so we'll see. That makes more sense, but it was just because we're only following Jessica Chastain, and she meets up with her comrades. You know, I just got the fact that they've been waiting on Earth for her to arrive for a while.
It was weird. It was weird because, like, I think it's like 3 beams of light come down, and then they split up, and they all crash on Earth. And, like, at first I was with Peyton. I was thinking, like, oh, one alien per light, you know? And then I realized there was a whole lot more aliens. So I just assumed that there was, like, they were either multiplying or what. Yeah, I don't know. But I also agree that I think it's utterly ridiculous that this is the first X-Men movie where going to space has even been mentioned.
Yes.
And we're already cool with a bunch of students going to space, having this technology, and then aliens. Like, everyone's cool with it, but, like, I don't know. You know, in the other X-Men timeline, they hadn't gone to space yet, and that was, like, 10 years after this or something, so.
It is pretty ridiculous. And the last thing I really have to say is, if you guys think that this is a Frankenstein of a movie, look forward to New Mutants coming out in 2020.
Reshoots still yet to happen, right?
Yeah.
And the movie was filmed, like, 2 years ago.
Yeah. Which has another Game of Thrones actress in it. It has Maisie Williams in it, I believe.
And she's going to be like 3 years older in the reshoots than she's going to be in the original product. What'd you guys think of, before we go, what do you guys think of Dreadlock Man? Like, what a weird power, though.
I just found it odd that Michael Fassbender's living in a hippie commune with, like...
Yeah, and it's like, I have no idea how long I guess we have dates, so we know how long it's been since the last movie, but, like, I like how they get there and it's like, you've killed people, and he's like, not for a long time, and it's like, it hasn't been that long, man. You've killed a lot of people. I don't know. It's like, it's not like you forgot how to do it. Like, you killed a lot of people, and you over many a year.
And he never seems to really regret it unless he needs to be sympathetic, you know.
Yeah. Also, just a sidebar. You know, I don't blame these people for wanting to cage these mutants. It seems like every time they get equal rights or get on equal footing, someone tries to destroy the world.
One of them goes a little off the rails and nearly destroys the world.
And it's like, I feel like it does disservice to the metaphor that it's trying to show, right? Which is that, like, don't otherize people because everyone's really all the same and wants to belong. But really what I take from this movie is that some people can destroy you with their eyes. And like, and if they end up being bad, one of the bad ones, then they could destroy everything. So I don't know. I wish they would explore that idea a little bit more. So, anything else about X-Men Dark Phoenix, guys?
No.
Okay. What's coming out next week? What are we doing next week?
Men in Black comes out next week.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, okay. Well, let's count on Men in Black, I guess.
I like both those actors quite a bit, so I'm hoping for good things.
Thank you guys so much for listening. Thank you, Jake Wagner Russell, for our intro and outro music. You can hear more of his music at www.soundcloud.com/bopscotch. We just talked about what we're doing next week. Stay tuned to this channel. It will likely be Men in Black, but who knows? Maybe it'll be something cooler. Don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe to us at Casual Cinecast. And please leave us a review on iTunes.
Thanks so much for listening, guys, and thank you, Peyton, for being here, and we will see you guys next time.
All right, sounds good. Thanks for having me, and yeah, look forward to the next movie you talk about.
See you later.
you.